America is now bankrupt. And the question we're going to answer today is, how did America, at one time, reportedly, the richest country in the world, is now bankrupt? And now it's so bad that America cannot pay the interest on our debt. To understand that, we have to have three old guys today here because we've seen it happen over all these years. We can see it coming. The question is, what does that mean? That'd be like you saying, oh, I took out 10-second mortgages on my house, but now my job at McDonald's doesn't cover the mortgage payments. What does that mean? It means you'd be living out back of McDonald's. That's what it means, if you can understand this whole thing. Very, very important to understand how the richest country in the world went broke, and we're broke today. A lot of people had no idea back then, and unfortunately, to this day, they don't. How do we become bankrupt? How is it that we owe $1 trillion in interest payments and we don't collect that much? On top of that, we owe Social Security, Medicare, and the biggest asset in America today is student loan debt.
All the entitlements that are out there are far more than the national debt that we have.
Correct.
It's even bigger than when we hear the national debt just hit $33 trillion. It's maybe more like $200 trillion is the real number.
I think it's 260.
Yeah.
260 trillion is ungodly. How do we get this far into debt?
Well, I can remember in 1976 when the national debt was approaching $1 trillion and everybody was up in arms saying, well, we can't stand $1 trillion national debt, that the country will go down the drain. And fast forward a few more years and to 33 trillion, and just in 3 months in the Biden administration, they added over 1 trillion to the national debt. So it took us
in 200. A few months.
Yeah, in 3 months. It took us 200 years to get to the first trillion. Biden was able to add another trillion to the 33 that we have now in 3 months.
Well, thank you, Joe, and all you liberal college professors out there.
And I told my kids one day, I said, no matter what else I do in life, the one thing I've been forced to become an expert on is government lying. Because think about how it's corresponded with our whole lives. There was the Kennedy assassination. There was the Gulf of Tonkin incident that didn't really happen. There was the Pentagon Papers.
The problem is a lot of people listening have no idea what you're talking about.
I know, but we're going to get up to things like the missing weapons of mass destruction. Does that sound familiar to younger people? The Nord Stream pipeline blow up. I mean, it just keeps going on and on and on. And I say to young people, if you want to do something in life that is a real growth industry, forget artificial intelligence, forget all that stuff. Get into the business of keeping up with government lying, because it's a growth industry. It's bigger and bigger than one man can handle. The Federal Reserve, that's where it really goes on. And that's why we're in the predicament you were referring to earlier.
Right. Speaking to younger people, how did we get here? We were once the richest country in the world, 1945.
Yeah.
They made the U.S. dollar the reserve currency of the world. And the dollar was backed by gold after World War II because we sent millions of people over to Europe and Pacific, and we came out the richest country in the world, 1944. And now we're bankrupt.
You know, they told the rest of the world at that time, you used to hold gold in your reserves and issue your own currencies against gold. Gold's passé. So from now on, you just hold U.S. dollars. You hold these U.S. dollars, issue your currency against these U.S. dollars. And it didn't take long for people to suddenly start realizing that the United States is printing a lot more dollars than they have gold to back it up with.
So 1944, we were a legitimate country.
Yeah.
Banks all over the world would take the U.S. dollar.
Yeah. Which was redeemable still
correct.
For foreigners.
People would take the U.S. dollar. I was in Peru. Their central banker showed me all the dollars they had stacked in their safe because it was as good as gold. And then what happened in 1971, Tricky Dick Nixon took us off the gold standard and the dollar became debt.
And that should have been the tipping point for all of us if we didn't already see it in 1933 when Roosevelt confiscated the gold from the American people, but foreigners could own it. We couldn't exchange our paper dollars for gold. In fact, if you had gold, you had to turn it in. And if you didn't, you could have been fined up to $10,000 or imprisoned for 6 months.
That's the 1933 Act. They took our gold. That was a communist FDR, Franklin Roosevelt, who brought us Social Security, which is now bankrupt.
Even worse than just stealing, which I think we agree they did. They stole all the gold, but they called it in at about $20 an ounce. And once they had it all, then they raised the price to $35. So the American people were swindled out of billions of dollars in one swift move.
Once again, all you young people listening, this is what don't teach you in school. Because the schools are Marxist, they're communist. My poor dad had no idea what was going on. I remember in 1964, I'm holding up a U.S. quarter. And I'm looking, this is in Hawaii, I'm going, why is this quarter copper? So I asked my dad, I says, why is this copper? He says, get good grades, you'll be fine. You know what I mean? So I'm looking at this quarter, but little did I know. See what happens when you go to schools who are led by Marxists. They're good people. They're just Marxists. Like some people are Jewish, some people are Christians and all that. Economics is kind of a religion, but they're Marxists. So I'm holding up the quarter and I'm going, what is wrong with it? It's got copper in it. 1964. And that was Gresham's law. And Gresham's law says what?
Bad money will drive good money out of circulation.
bad money drives out good money. So that was 1964. I asked my dad, I said, what's going on? He goes, just get good grades. That's our problem. And today, Arizona State University, they're just revolting on campus and all this, led by 39 professors who attacked me last year. What is wrong with our school system? Anyway, the reason people could not tell that quarter was fake was because their education system is part of the problem.
They didn't understand money. Yeah, what gives this green piece of paper value? They think, where does milk and eggs come from? Milk and eggs come from Safeway. And they don't understand the farm in the background that makes milk and egg. They don't understand what gives money its value. Right. And so that's how they've been able to bamboozle this nation now for generations with fake money.
The point here is this: in 1913, the Fed was created. First Marxist act in this country. Somebody go, how can you call the Fed Marxist? Central bank.
Yeah, it's one of the planks of Karl Marx's 10-plank Communist Manifesto. He says, if you will accomplish these 10 steps, you will have a communist state. And chief among them is the creation of a central bank in charge of money and credit.
And who runs the central bank? College professors. Yeah. Who is the Secretary of Treasury? College professor. Yeah. Marxist. Yeah. Communist. Yeah. Don't look at me. Check it out. Janet Yellen is a college professor.
Yeah, and a Marxist too.
That's what I'm saying. And our central bank, the Fed, everybody goes, oh, what's the Fed going to do? What's the Fed doing today? I said, it's not what the Fed's doing, it's what are you doing? What are you doing? Are you still working hard, saving money, investing in the phony stock market right now? I mean, what are you guys doing? Oh, no. I'm going to do what my teacher tells me to do. We're old enough to know the history of how America, the richest country in history, is now technically bankrupt. I was looking at a chart this morning of the national debt. We cannot pay interest on our debt.
It cannot be sustained.
What does that mean?
Well, they can't collect enough taxes for it to happen. They can't print it fast enough. The value of the dollar will just nosedive. It's already going way down. We're at historic inflation numbers right now. How can you sustain that kind of a debt, pay the interest on it without running the country into the ground?
And even some of the establishment guys are starting to scratch their head and look at this. So Moody's downgraded U.S. government debt just last week. Fitch's has downgraded it. It's been downgraded since 2011. But the American people hear that news and they don't know what it means. They don't think there's anything wrong with it.
But I got a college degree. I have a college degree. My kid's in a good school. And they're being brainwashed.
They're being indoctrinated, yeah.
Something is wrong. So I asked my poor dad, PhD, Stanford, Northwestern University of Chicago, what does that mean? Just stay in school and study. Don't question the government. And the more he did that, and I started talking to my rich dad, he goes, what do you listen to all the time? How many times the government lies to us per minute? They lie constantly.
Endless.
The old joke about how do you know if a politician is lying? You see their lips move. Well, that's not funny anymore because it's true.
And now we're bankrupt, but my kid's in a good school. I go, oh my God. So that's why I wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad, back in 1997 it came out. I want to find out how stupid our American kids are. So he went outside this school, really cute young girl. He says, how many stripes on the American flag? She says, I don't know. The flag's moving.
Do you know what country Canada is in? Vermont?
And what's our biggest budget expense? Military education. But it wasn't that long ago. I remember 1971, crystal clear, when Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. I went, holy mackerel. I had no idea what it meant. I was flying off a carrier in Vietnam, Gulf of Tonkin, killing commies for Jesus out there. And I'm going, holy mackerel, how did I get into this war? Why am I killing nice people? Asking me this question. And Rich Dad sends me a letter by snail mail back then. It was an FPO fleet post office box. And it says, hey, Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. So this was like December by the time I received it. He took the dollar off the gold standard August 15th, 1971. I go, what does that mean? But how fast did America become the poorest country in the world from the richest? And within our lifetime, that wasn't that long. We went from the richest country in the world, 1944. We just kicked everybody's butt in World War II, the Japanese, the Germans, the Italians. And now we're the biggest debtor nation in world history. We cannot pay our bills. The Federal Reserve Bank's run by a bunch of academics. Look at Treasury Secretary Yellen, who looks like one of the Addams Family cartoon characters. Biden is the biggest I've ever met. First thing he does is cut off the Keystone XL pipeline. First act, cut off the Keystone XL pipeline. Oil goes from $30 a barrel to $130 a barrel.
On Inauguration Day.
I know. This guy was
He couldn't wait.
He was intending to sink the middle class. Kamala will take over. Oh, my God. But anyway, there was a bunch of characters during this time. That's how fast it went. The guys I confer with are guys like Jim Rickards. That boy, he worked for the CIA, Defense Department. He was with Long-Term Capital Management. He wrote the book Currency Wars. I say, hey, Jim, how's my numbers? He says, pretty close. I don't call my professor at college who doesn't know anything. Jim says, you're pretty close. He's calling for $15,000 gold. $15,000 gold. How much is it today, gentlemen?
2,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, no, I'd rather hang on to my stocks and my bonds. What's happened to the bond market?
Been tough.
crashing.
Been a real bad year.
The $15,000 gold is not out of the question. If you look at the continuous value of the dollars, in 1974, gold was $100 an ounce, and within 5 years, it was $850.
Right.
Silver went from $5 to $50 in
Right.
that same period.
Right. But I hate to say this, I warn you guys, okay? We're just telling you true life stories. The saddest thing was when I told my friends I was buying silver, they laughed at me. And when I crashed, they laughed at me. My friends are still laughing at me, but they have bonds. And T-bills and T-bonds are crashing.
Brutal. It's blood in the streets.
Yeah, because what happened when Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard, the treasury bond became gold, and now it's crashing. And all of these baby boomers with their 401ks full of stocks and bonds, they're not going to be able to retire. That's what I'm afraid of. Our schools have done such a good job telling us, go to school, get a job, and work hard for money, and they're printing it. You got to be crazy. I remember when I was in the middle of all this going, when I was just a little kid, what's going on, what's going on, what's going on? Same thing I'm doing today, what's going on? So this guy says, I borrowed money from my brother-in-law. Would you mind taking my position? So, I mean, I got to collect money from your brother-in-law? Yeah. And where is he? He's in jail? No, I don't think that's counterpart, you know what I mean? But basically, that's what happened to the Hunt brothers. A lot of people got caught with their pants down, and they are in high places, or the deep state.
Yeah.
Is when FDR confiscated all gold and silver. And he said it to me to remind me not to get too complacent, because we're from the government, we're here to help ourselves, not help you. You know?
That's right.
This time it's different. This is the new economy. We are just coming out of the longest bull run in history, 11 years. And in 2011, I made the biggest fortunes of my life because that was the MBS, mortgage-backed securities, and the CDO crashes, the real estate crashed. And I backed up the truck. I borrowed $300 million to buy the best real estate all across the Southwest. This is the longest bull market in history. I look at some of these young kids. I own some Bitcoin, I own some Ethereum, but they're all saying the same thing. This time it's different, and Bitcoin's crashed. The Federal Reserve Bank, I can't believe that. I mean, people say, don't fight the Fed and all this. Well, my question to everybody is this: can the Fed print oil? Can the Fed print gasoline? Can it print food? But everybody sits there and they've been brainwashed by Wall Street to go, do as the Fed tells you to do. Well, you got to be kidding me. Those guys are the three stooges, Janet Yellen, Biden, and Powell. You got to be kidding me. Why would you listen to them? Volcker saying it's going to crush, so he raised interest rates, right? So Powell is now channeling the spirit of Volcker. When Volcker crushed inflation, debt to GDP was 30%. And today it's 125% if you believe the numbers. So if he channels Volcker, and the other thing about history will tell you this: there's never been a soft landing. It's more Fed talk. I've made more money in the last 3 years in my whole life. And so that's what I want to talk about with you today, is that there's other ways of looking at investing, but to think that Powell is going to save you when, as you may know, the reverse repo market is running at $2 trillion a day today.
Right.
$2 trillion a day. And people are listening to Powell? You got to be kidding me. I own no stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs. I do not touch paper. I'm not saying that you shouldn't, but I'm saying people have been brainwashed by the Fed, the Treasury, whatever those guys are. Go to school, get a job, pay your taxes, get a high-paying job, and invest for the long term in a well-diversified portfolio of stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs. It was in 1974 when I came back from Vietnam, a two-tour Marine helicopter pilot. I saw communism at work. It was not pretty. And I come back in 1974, they passed ERISA. ERISA stands for 401k right now, or IRA. And I went, oh my God, they're funneling my generation, the boomers, into the stock market. And they don't know anything about money. And in 1974, the biggest exodus was school teachers suddenly becoming financial planners. I watched it in horror. That's the poor leading the blind. And today we have baby boomers who are hoping the stock market stays up in their 401k just as Social Security goes bust. You think that's an accident? That's all I'm saying. I'm just a Marine. I'm a dumbass Marine lieutenant. Flew the gunship, went down 3 times. But today I listen to this bullshit and I go, oh my God, how can we be that stupid? Because we went to school, we did as we're told. Don't fight the Fed, do as the Fed tells you. Invest for long-term, a well-diversified portfolio of stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs. And don't worry, Powell is now channeling Volcker. When the debt to GDP is at 120%, you gotta be kidding me. So when they were dropping the interest rates, I thought I went to heaven because I buy apartment houses. I own 13,000 apartment houses. Every time the Fed dropped the interest rates, it jacked the value of my properties up, but I also improved the properties and I refinance out. So today I own no money in any of my properties. 13,000 units, all throwing cash. They said in a bull market, even idiots feel smart. I'm listening to all these idiots, after 2011, the market crashed in 08 because the repo market went bad. The credit of Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns was bad. So they hammered Bear. Anyway, it's a long story. My friends are all inside that world. But then when it came back out, they just started pumping money. And what they did was they kept printing more money to save a bad economy. It was already crashing again in 2011, but they kept printing money. And today we're going to pay that price. I use debt because debt is tax-free money. What I did was I rehabbed my apartment, 13,000 of them. I just kept buying more with the cash flow. And I'd refinance out as interest rates drop. So I'm in good shape now. Then I've set all interest rates right now. So I use debt. And who's that guy who says live debt free? Well, that's his opinion. I don't do that. I don't flip houses. Remember all those guys were flipping?
Everybody flipped.
Oh, they were stupid. When the moment you flip, you have a tax consequence. I never flip. I finance out as tax-free money. Not only that, is when I started investing, I had to invest at 12% interest rates. I like debt and I don't pay taxes. Because every time I borrow more money to float my properties, there's 3 types of tax breaks. I got appreciation, depreciation, and amortization. So I zero out. So my cost of money is, my tax on debt is 0. And I use that tax, appreciation, depreciation, amortizations, all in which I poured to offset tax in my income. When Biden took the Keystone XL pipeline off, my oil I was selling from the ground, which is a tax break also, went from $30 a barrel to $130 a barrel. But I went, oh my God, this guy Biden is going to bankrupt us. I'm not saying him, but there's somebody who wants to bankrupt because oil is the lifeblood of civilization. I worked for Standard Oil of California as a tanker officer when I graduated from school. I understand oil. I was on the Alaska pipeline and all this. I'm like, he's screwing us. So when he raises inflation, the poor and middle class will go broke. And that was just done as soon as he was being done before he took office. And so I'm looking at this guy's going to sell America down the drain. I'm not saying it's him, but somebody wants us to go broke. And I'm watching this going, oh my God, so what else can so I have oil wells. I get tax breaks for those because I don't invest in oil stocks. I work for Standard Oil, but I don't invest in Standard Oil. I invest in the oil in the ground. I'm a wildcatter. Everybody says don't do it. I don't recommend it, but I like doing it. My gold mines don't do it. I like doing it. There's more opportunity today than ever before, but not if you've been brainwashed into going to school, getting a job, paying taxes, live debt free, and invest in the stock market. This bubble right now is a bigger bubble than 2008. This is the everything bubble. You know, it's going to be not only stocks, bonds, but also credit. But it's more opportunity is going to come out of it. And that's what I'm saying. Be careful who you listen to, because your best asset, but also your biggest liability, are the ideas in your head. And be careful who puts them there.
That's how far the brainwashing has gone.